Hello everyone, welcome back to Classic Spin. Thank you for tuning in. We start off where we left off, which was talking about Hilary of Poitiers. I will get the audiobook playing now. In Hilary's case, there was no bias of prejudice against Arian speculation as such. His words speak for themselves. Though for a good while regenerate, and for some little time a bishop, I never heard of the Nicene Creed until I was going into exile. But the Gospels and Epistles suggested to me the meaning of homoousios and homoiousios. The witness of the Gospels, pondered by a mind that only in mature manhood had forsaken heathenism for Christ, brought Hilary to the same conclusion as the Nicene Council. This is a useful argument against the assertion that the thinkers of that age delighted in dogmatic speculation for its own sake. Far from it. We are forced, wrote Hilary, to deal with unlawful matters, to scale perilous heights, to speak unutterable words, to trespass on forbidden ground. Faith ought in silence to fulfill the commandments, worshipping the Father, reverencing with him the Son, abounding in the Holy Ghost. But we must strain the poor resources of our language to express thoughts too great for words. The error of stress compels us to err, in daring to embody in human terms truths which ought to be hidden in the silent veneration of the heart. It is very tempting to some minds to criticize church assemblies from the comfortable citadel of an armchair. Not long since, the House of Clergy, discussing the revision of the prayer book, were accused of wasting time on antiquarian researches, being concerned with the maintenance of ancient and difficult dogmas, and of being oblivious of the fact that these are not acceptable to the younger generation who are keenly interested in ethical problems. The amazing thing about this kind of loose talk is that few of the critics define their terms. Dogma simply means a reasoned statement, and it is true to say that writers on art or science, or even the ethical problems, study of which is to bring us back to the simplicity of Christ, can be just as dogmatic as any theologian. And they may be right. The only trouble about theological dogmas, as such, is that they may be expressed so tersely that they require more explanation than is usually given to them, so that the train of reasoning involved in them is not appreciated as it might be. Thomas Carlyle certainly held no brief for theologians, but he came to the conclusion that in the long controversy which we have been studying, Athanasius was in the right, and said to Froude that he perceived Christianity itself to have been at stake. If the Arians had won, it would have dwindled away to a legend. We may turn the tables on our critics, in regard of the Nicene Creed, by inquiry into the ethics of Arianism. Surely, if the Arian denial of the homoousios is true, there should be among Arians, ex hypothesi, greater zeal for ethical studies, and a deeper sense of responsibility for conduct, than among the Nicenes. We find that the facts bring us to precisely the opposite conclusion. Guatkin says that the poverty of Arian ethics is most significant. Fragment after fragment of the Monumenta Vetera is purely polemical, and the Skye Reigns of Ulfilas is almost the sole remaining Arian document which is not so. But Ulfilas was only accidentally an Arian. Streams rise above their source in mission work. Here, then, is the shallowness revealed of much modern talk about turning from dogmatic theology to ethics. That beautiful phrase of the Creed of Caesarea, lived as a citizen amongst men, which, alas, dropped out in the revision, is valueless, unless we can be quite certain as to the secret of that perfect life which was not less human than divine. We may quote on the Nicene side another missionary bishop who worked among Gothic immigrants, or among the native tribes of the Balkan hills, not far from the scene of the labors of Ulfilas, Niceta of Remesiana. He belonged, it is true, to the next generation, but it is not unfair to quote him, for their lives overlapped. He witnessed to the power of a complete belief in the Nicene faith of the Holy Trinity, and in his instructions to catechumens, he was always concerned that their faith should be manifest in a good life. He was an admirer of St. Basil, whom St. Athanasius won over to the Nicene cause, and it is significant that his description of him does not refer to his ability as a metaphysician, but as an outstanding shepherd of souls. The great majority of the bishops, when they went back from Nicaea to their flocks, were not so much concerned with theological speculation as with ordinary pastoral activities of the Church, just as the bulk of the clergy, who had met for 3 weeks in the year to discuss prayer book revision, went back to their parishes. No false system ever struck more directly at the life of Christianity than Arianism. Yet after all it held aloft the Lord's example as the Son of Man, and never wavered in its worship of him as the Son of God. On its own principles, this was absolutely heathen creature worship, yet the work of Ulfilas is an abiding witness that faith is able to assimilate the strangest errors, and the conversion of the northern nations remains an evidence that Christianity can be a power of life, even in its most degraded forms.